Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to try and draw trees. Trees are a good subject for drawing because they have different shades, different character, and it really helps you improve your drawing, especially when you're starting out. So let's go ahead and start drawing on this Paintology app, which you can download in the link below. And I'm going to show you step by step how to create a tree drawing from the picture on the top left. As you know, the app has a color palette to the left and the brush is available on the right. So here presently I've selected the charcoal tool as a brush tool for this drawing. You could select other tools, of course, other brushes, but I find the charcoal tool is quite good, especially for beginners drawings. And as you can see, I'm just simply outlining the shape of the trees. If you saw my previous tutorials, initial drawing is very broad with broader strokes and very loose strokes, and you can see I'm using a lower color shade for the tree, so it's not like dark, immediate dark, because I'm not doing any type of ink drawing as such. I'm just laying down the form and shape for the early part of the drawing, so I can start adding details as I go along. So this tree is particularly interesting. It's not the kind of trees that you see hardwood or the straight edges. If you look close enough, it has like pieces of bark falling off. So I think it will be a bit difficult attempting to do that. So we're going to try and just do the simple tree structure that most people are familiar with. So as part of the beginning drawing, one should always find observe the drawing and find the actual darks and the lighter tones, the darker tones. So here you can see I've shifted the color to the darker color and now putting down the dark tones to that. So I picked a medium-sized brush that I could use, medium size, and then just going over it with a darker tone. But remember, it's not a completely hard dark tone. The actual setting has, for the density and hardness, is quite low. You could think of density hardness as the opacity. So this allows me to build the color to the higher tone level. You can think of it like that. You can see I'm trying to define the trees a bit more here, applying the dark areas. So always look at the composition of the drawing to see how it's coming along. Usually my method is I don't always tend to look at the overall picture. I just tend to go along and mimic the dark and light tones wherever I can. And in terms of getting texture on the drawing, I would use the brush, the size of the brush for that, and perhaps also increase the opacity to get the relevant. In fact, I'll show you towards the end where I do quite a bit of that. So here I'm constantly going back and forth between the picture and my drawing, and basically just picking out the patches of grey, dark areas. So this essentially creates a composition which is, if you get it right, very similar to the drawing itself. I always find that when I constantly build up the drawing, it actually turns out to be okay doing the actual drawing, even though I'm not paying attention to the full composition just yet. So you see that I'm more or less adding the darker areas. So here I will reduce the size a little bit and adding more darker. You can see the opacity of this dark areas is quite high. And I wouldn't worry of too much at this stage of how the drawing's going to come out, because you're trying to deduce the overall drawing based on an incomplete composition, and that would be incorrect to do. You continuously build it. And as I was explaining in my previous drawings, that it's only after you've put down something on the paper, well in this case the tablet, that you can compare and adjust and use references to go to another part of the drawing, and then just continuously build it up, and it helps. So putting down the first application is a really important step, not in the sense that it has to be accurate, but in the sense that it helps you, provides you with a reference for the other areas of the drawing, and this will also help you to to get the other parts of the drawing right, to the sort of the accuracy that you're looking for. Here you can see I increased the size of the drawing, and it's only because I want to use a much broader brush to create the patchworks of tone quickly onto the canvas. And I've already got an idea of what I wanted to do in the background here. As you can see, unlike the picture, I'm actually going to, I do like that stream that's hidden by the foliage, and I'm going to create a distinct foliage, distinct riverbed, a stream maybe on the back, so it's quite clear. So here you see I went from a completely the higher brush size to a lower brush size, and now to get some of the areas that you can see in the actual picture itself, those how you would call solid areas, which are smaller in size and quite fairly dark. So the color palette was changed to the dark tone, and now I'm just going there that so you can see that by reducing the brush size, I can get some kind of interesting effects which are more or less similar. I'm not always attempting to get the exact type of look that the reference picture shows me. I'm just basically laying down what I think is a close approximation to what those lines are represented. So yeah, it's sort of a trial and error. You just go ahead. So as you can see, I'm quickly putting these lines down rapidly just to give more a sense of dimension to the whole drawing. I think with most people, the frustration in drawing comes from not being able to see the result exactly as they're hoping they would, and for me that's not a concern. Yeah, I always find that oops, it's not going quite the way I want it sometimes, but I know at the end I will probably have it down. It's a question of just going along, adding, taking off, adding, taking off, doing this, doing that, and those kind of monitoring those kind of progress in your head and trying to foresee that progress in your head is really just way too tasking. Just much better to just go with the flow and just do it. In fact, it should be more fun doing that. So you can see here I'm adding lighter tones, and by doing that you can see the kind of texture and the whole adding more 3D effect, the foreground of that tree, and now I'm adding those lighter texture to the foliage. I'm not trying to mimic any of the actual leaves, because the way I understand or look at this reference drawing, it's purely based on zigzags of lines, zigzags of white, sections of white here and there. That's basically it. When you look at that drawing, you flatten it by assuming it just areas of dark, areas of grey, areas of light. That's it. In reality, that's what it is. And if you apply that knowledge, you basically end up something similar, if not, close to that drawing, the reference drawing. So it's not like I am sectioning off the tree or the stream. I'm just applying the different tones to try and get the various darks and greys, and even the smaller in between the trees you'll see sections of grey patches, and I'll be trying to figure out how to do that using the tools at my disposal. So where I've probably slightly deviated away from the just pure copying of the grey tones rather than the picture, if you can call it that, is when I'm redefining this image with that stream that I was telling you about. That I'm making that area more cleaner and more open for me to do my own dark and light areas that I'm going to apply at the end. So I'm just basically being drawn by the changes, the darks and greys, and even the small minute areas that you see. Once I've done the bulk of the drawing, I could focus on those little bits, and this is essentially what I'm doing right now. I mean, this is just one approach to drawing. It seems to work for me because I think a majority of people have a hard time referencing an image and then applying that image to an actual drawing. And for me, it seems like the ratio is very simple, 1-to-1. Whatever I see, I can coordinate my arms and the operation of my brain to just try and mimic exactly what I see. So perhaps that's really what makes people good artists, in that they're able to flatten the image in front of them and see it for what it is, rather than focusing on how they're going to their ability to put something down on paper, because I believe that they've gone way beyond that. And I think in school you'll find that there's a handful of people who are really good at drawing, and I find myself to be in that small group, and other children would admire their ability. And I think it's not so much down to the fact that they're experienced or have drawn a lot. I think it's just the way that they can coordinate their mind and reference an image and apply it to a drawing. That's really what it is. And part of it is, of course, they do it enough times to improve. So there has been conversation. There has been a good book by Betty. I forget the last one. The surname escapes me. Betty Edwards, I think, and she wrote about how the left-sided brain, the right-sided brain, come into play when it comes to drawing. And I think it's training the mind to look at the image as an input, and then the output is essentially how you output what you see. So a lot of the struggles with beginner drawers is what they see and what they output can be vastly different. And even though for anyone else, it's pretty obvious what the reference image looks like. So I think it's a retraining of that synchronization of that input and output that one needs to work on. And obviously the frustration creeps in when you actually see something but you're unable to replicate it with a pencil and paper. So again, for people stuck in that zone, it's always a good idea to keep practicing. That's all there is to it, really. And if you want to see you may find it useful, is that I did some drawings with my left hand, and you'll be able to see it in the YouTube channel regarding that. And it clearly shows how proficient one becomes once they train their hands, train their ability to draw. Although I didn't make the early mistakes most beginners make, which is draw something completely different to what they see. because I found that even though I was using a left hand, which I've hardly used or never used, I was still had the ability to take some of my learning experience and transfer it to my left hand drawing. It wasn't at first, it wasn't I wasn't comfortable as such, at the beginning, but I think towards midway, 30-day challenge I gave myself, towards midway I was able to get pretty much good at it quickly, and then by the end of 30 days I found myself drawing almost as good as my right hand. So again, here you can see I'm not so much concerned about the composition yet. I don't think I'm looking at the composition, although if I'd removed the reference image from my drawing here, I may go in a different direction and use more of my imagination as to make this drawing to what I feel would be a sort of a work of art, in a way, if you can call it that. So it would be my version of what I think it would look like. And looking at this drawing right now, I can see myself possibly doing something like that, because I'm already sort of seeing some of the changes, the foliage around the tree trunk, which is I'm looking at right now, the bottom of the base of the tree. But I think when I was doing this drawing, and this is obviously, as you can know, it's my conversation after the drawing, so I can see that I was actually stepping through the same zone of thinking, which is just effectively what I was telling you earlier, trying to get the grey tones, the dark tones, lighter tones, as I see in the reference image. And as I mentioned before, by doing that, you more or less replicate the image that you see. So effectively, as you can see the way I'm actually handling this drawing, I don't look at the drawing in the sense that it has to match everything that I see. Sort of look at it like a mishmash of lights and grey. That's all I do. And by understanding that mishmash and just continuously paying attention to that, I don't think you're going to get frustrated with drawing. You're going to probably like what you've done, because you're not really looking at, I mean, some of the drawings tell you to look at the edges and look at the I don't necessarily have an edge in mind. I look at the drawing and I can see trunks, tree trunks. Okay, they do have edges, but they're basically trunks. So that's the way I'm going to draw it. I'm going to build some kind of a form and shape around the tree trunks, and then do the foliage around the tree. So here you can see I'm trying to get some kind of effects because that's not in the reference image. I'm basically trying to see if I can make something that closely resembles or adds some uniformity or conformity, you can call it, to the whole drawing without the background, without upsetting the foreground here. So it's just a question of playing with the darks and lows here. Well, you just saw there that I just pushed the density of the opacity all the way to the maximum, and now applying some really bold colors, dark colors on the top, so you can actually see the kind of effects it's having. It can push some of the lighter colors to the back, giving more dimension, and naturally adds more texture. And add more texture to the whole image. So here you have the ability to go between dark and white. So what you've done is you've stretched the bandwidth of that whole image with the final two shades of color, which is the extreme black and the extreme white. But notice, after the black, I'm actually going for the high opaque gray as well. This is something which I'm visualizing on the reference image, and that's the reason I'm doing that. So, reviewing this image, the drawing that I've done, I think about the improvements I could have made or wanted to make. Is that this is where you learn from doing your drawings, is that you have to review the drawing you did and to see where improvements can be made. And looking back at this drawing, I can see I would probably make some changes, defining the tree more perhaps, the edges of the tree trunks, maybe adding some really bright whites in some areas around the screen. Notice I am adding some very opaque whites here now. So my focus again wasn't the whole composition. At that time it was just basically just mimicking the tonal values that I saw in the original reference picture. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and I hope to bring some more tutorials to help you improve your drawing. So if you like this video, please subscribe, the link below, and I'm sure to bring you more tutorials that will help you get into this digital world. And it's not as bad as people make it out. It's actually quite fun. And see you again soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.